Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Hello, you can't hear me, right? Yeah. Feedback. Hello. Let me see. I'm assuming that's titanium. Hello. Oh, wings. Hello. Can you hear me? There's the answer. Switch to. Good morning. Um, so right here. Be good. Hmm. I already drink water. Stella, I heard about your commit. Congrats. That's pretty awesome. D1? Nice. Betsy, good to see you again.
I think.
Dylan? That's not our guest speaker. That's my sister, who's used to be a big fan of our guest back in the day. It's the perks of being related to this teacher. Watch me get stood up.
So, but I still giving it, like, I'm not gonna, where's the street? Yeah, I mean, there's no one, but the guy that did that, just stop that day, I really had.
Yeah, the only thing I thought about is that, like, halfway through his thing, we're gonna have the announcements. Like, I wish there's a way to turn it off. There's not a way to turn it off that y'all know of, is there? Darn it. I guess you'll just have to, like, pray with us or something. Bless you.
Can I go to my locker really quick?
Sure, Fred.
That's like, she can give. I don't know if she's- They will people see it on that, so. After I said, we're not use that when she can. Now. And she's on her theory, that's it, you know, that I. It's that.
Good. Anthony. Oh. Hey, Chris, sorry. Can you try to figure out
the best way to do this?
problems sound wise? All right, there we go. Nope. Oh, I know.
One sec, Jeff.
Chris, are you able to hear me?
I can hear you. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. We're trying to, I think I've got this all set up okay now.
Hang on one sec. I'm just making sure I gotta. Yeah, I'm good. I'm good.
Okay, terrific. So I'll do a real brief announcement. I want to maximize the most of your time, as obviously I appreciate you're here and sure everybody else does, and then I'll turn the camera around so you're able to see everybody as well. And so for you guys, a little introduction. I'm pretty excited about this. We've got with us today a special guest, Chris Therien, who was a member of the Philadelphia Flyers back in the late 1990s, early 2000s. So Chris is a native of Ottawa, Ontario. He played college hockey at Providence and also was a member of the Canadian national team that played in the Olympics in 1994 and won a silver medal. And then he moved on to the NHL, where he had a very long career, 14 years, most of that time with the Flyers, where he holds the distinction of being the Flyer to have played the most games as a defenseman, and also made a Stanley Cup appearance in Stanley Cup Finals, 1997. We won't talk about how that ended. Sadly, the reason I remember this is because my son was born on the day that the Red Wings won, so I blame him. It's not your guys' fault. And then after Flyers, Chris went on to have a long career with in broadcasting with the Flyers and other teams. You may have seen him on TV, you may have heard him on the radio, and none of these things qualify him to speak with you right now. So the reason he's here to talk with us is more because of another part of his life, which he will tell his story, is that Chris is a recovering alcoholic. And that is coming up in our chapter that we're in the middle of right now. And he has done a lot as far as public speaking and just awareness about the disease. And I say disease because it is a disease, as we'll talk about. And he's here to tell you his story, answer some questions. We have him until about 8:45. I apologize ahead of time, Chris. At some point, announcements are going to come through, and we can either walk through it or you could pray with the group. Up to you. Otherwise, I will clearly turn it over to you now. Enough of me talking. You hear enough of that. So I'll give you Chris Therien.
Well, first of all, thanks. Thank you for having me, Jeff. And I don't know if the kids call you Mr. Dunn or not. We always did up until the end of high school, call our teachers by our last name. I don't know if times have changed that much. Class, it's a real pleasure to be here this morning. Good morning. I hope everybody had a good weekend. And I know we had a good Eagles win yesterday. I was at the game, and that was a little bit nuts and probably a little too much at the end. But I'm here this morning. When your teacher had asked me to, who'd heard my story, I wrote a book that came out almost a year ago, October 25th. And I think one of the big things I'd like to really kind of share as I see you guys sit in your class, thanks for flipping the camera for me, Jeff, was the similarities and a lot of the things that I see with you guys sitting in your class that was like me as a youngster as well. And to where I ended up and where I'm at now, I'll just tell you a little bit about it. And then what I'll do is I'll open up for some questions. As your teacher said, we probably got to about 8:45. So I'll talk for a little bit and explain how easy, alcohol use disorder can come down on somebody. And things that I like telling the story because it's nothing that anybody should have to deal with. And I'd like to tell you a little bit about it in the hopes that either, if something comes across you guys or you're dealing with it someday, or you have a parent or another loved one or a friend or family member, to understand that it does happen, and we don't always get to pick why it happens, and there's no rhyme or reason to it. So as I said, I was like one of you young guys, young kids in the classes, and I grew up in Ottawa. Ottawa's famous for having the longest skating rink in the world. It is a canal that goes through our city. And what's it, and it runs about 4 miles long. We go from one end of the city to the other. People skate and go to work some days. But point is, I grew up very, very humble beginnings. I loved hockey. I grew up in Ottawa. It was cold up there in Canada, and we had an opportunity to be on skates a lot, especially in the winter. So one of my biggest, as I go through and look back at my history, and I'm going to kind of spare you guys with a lot of the intimate details early in my life. I always felt that my journey in life kind of became around 12 or 13 years old. I got cut from 2 different hockey teams when I tried out. I got bullied in high school. I got bullied at the end of my elementary and middle school years. And I actually at 14 years old, I quit hockey for an entire year because I got gotten cut from teams. It wasn't making sense for me, and I wasn't progressing the way that I probably wanted to. I quit hockey for a year and I skied until 15 years old. And my dad then sent me away to Lake Placid, where I went to Northwood Prep School. And that was kind of where my career and my life changed. I ended up being a really good hockey player. Went to Northwood. I grew through high school years, where it's, if, you're in your formative years a lot, and there's a lot of self-identification at the age that you guys are in right now, wondering about yourselves, about your future, about who you are in the moment. And those are tough things to deal with sometimes. Bullying was a humongous part of I remember my childhood, dealing with it, seeing it. And I don't know, I look back at a lot of this stuff when I look back at the story I'm going to tell you and what happened. And I often attribute it to what happened to me back in those 13 to 18 year old years of my life. So I went off to Lake Placid, and my fortunes changed athletically. I became, Northwood was one of the great hockey schools in the country, and I went on in my senior year, after my 3rd year there, to become pretty, maybe the best player that they'd ever had at the school, and still holds to this day. We had some great players come through there, but that was kind of a moment for me in high school where I kind of was able to rise above a lot of the stuff that I'd went through. And the part when I was 14 that I'd been cut, here I was as an 18-year-old getting drafted in the NHL, and I accepted a full scholarship offer to Providence College, where I went for 3 years. And that's for me. And I'm just going to tell you guys, in terms of addiction and drinking and stuff, I always felt that I can look back at it. Yes, I was touched by addiction later in my life. Later when I was actually in the NHL, but it all started when I was probably coming out of my senior year of high school, going into college. I always feel like kids start drinking, and that's when you light that fuse that I think a lot of things will carry with you for the rest of your life. And so I went to Providence, and not unlike any kid, like you guys are going to find out too. You go to college, there's going to be people that party. There's going to be people that do things that are a little different than perhaps you'd see in a regular setting when you go away. There's always going to be some college kids that are going to go party a lot more than others. And you're going to find that in life. You're going to find people go to extremes at different lengths that other people do in life. And you have to figure out what's best for you. And I always suggest to people too, take the high road when you get put in situations, especially late in high school and early college. There's so much out there now. There's so much video that gets taken. I always say judge yourself very openly in public, because that stuff can come back on you. And I lived in a time, as your teacher will tell you too, where we could do things. Things were a little different. There's no social media back then where there is now, where every single thing is getting videoed. And probably in a lot of my life where I'm at now, I'm grateful that I didn't have a lot of those video cameras or cell phone cameras out there taking videos of what went on. And those are something to be aware of as well. For people that are drinking or they're out and partying, you have to make good decisions. And I will talk about that as well. So I went to Providence for 3 years, and then I had a great career at Providence. It was a Division I. I was on a full scholarship for my 3 years. I'd been asked to leave after my second year to sign with the Flyers. And I'd come from a family that was very, very dedicated to education. My dad had, openly talked about me getting an education rather than perhaps taking that hockey route, but doing both together. And if it worked out that I made the NHL or I had a chance to, then we deal with that later. But education was a priority for my family. And that's why I ended up going to an American university from Canada to get an education. And in 1994, I went and played for the Canadian Olympic team. I had a great time in college. Probably partied a little bit too much, but I had a great time in college. It's something I wouldn't have changed. I was focused on hockey, and my career certainly was starting to turn the corner. I went to play the Olympic team in 1994 and had an unbelievable run. I won a silver medal in Norway for Team Canada. We lost in a shootout to my some of you wouldn't remember. Peter Forsberg had scored was a teammate of mine here in Philadelphia, one of the great players in the history of the game. And we lost in a shootout to Sweden, and he became my teammate with the Flyers, 12, 13 years later. So it ends up being a pretty cool story. But I want to get into the part, guys, where you have to make decisions in life. And when I put my book together, I wrote a book last year called Road to Redemption. I was going to bring one in, but I had to bring some to an event on the weekend to sign. So I did not have any left to bring you here, but I think your teacher might have some. I had the opportunity to when I look at my book and I look back at my journey, a lot of it does go back into my early 20s, my time when I was a kid and the decisions I made. But when I came into the Flyers, just to tell you guys, my first year, I made the all-rookie team in the NHL. And I drank that year 2 nights, my first year in the NHL. 2 nights. I hardly drank at all. I wasn't, I came out of Providence. I wasn't an alcoholic. I was just a normal partying, normal kid, but I was building a foundation at the time that I didn't really realize was going to happen later in life. That anything I did in my teens in Providence and my early 20s or my late teens, those are all things that I feel when I look back at now that were stuff that impacted me as I became a young adult and ended up having kids. So I was here in Philadelphia, was 22, 23 years old, made the team my first year, had a great rookie year, made the all rookie team, as I said. And that first year I was I was great. I was focused. I was so excited to be part of the Flyers, to be in this community. I loved Philadelphia. I loved the fans, and that stuff transcended my entire life. And it still exists to this day. I'm so passionate about Philadelphia. It's great fans. And that's part of also my story, is to have had something that I went through happen in this town. I really felt a lot of the support and a lot of love from the people that I was able to perform in front of in my career as a player. I realized at the end of the day, being a player was great, but being treated like a human being was far more important to me. And I got a sense of that. My journey went in, guys. My career ended in 2006, and through my career, every single year that I look at drinking and my use of alcohol, it increased over year after year after year. Whether that was from the pressures of playing, I ended up just to tell you a little bit, and I don't want to put it in a natural order. I wasn't a guy who was also as a player. People say, what kind of player were you? I was a top pair defenseman for over 10 years. I was playing some of the most minutes on the ice. I was playing with one of the best defensemen as my partner in the history of the team, Eric Desjardins. He was, I was lucky to have a guy like that, but we were very much like a Batman and Robin. I was the Robin, he was Batman, just so we make that clear. And I had an unbelievable run. Like, we were playing big time games, big time minutes, and we were part of a team that was in the playoffs every single year with a chance to win a Stanley Cup every year. But as I went along in my career, my drinking, as I said, went up every single year. And when I look at it too, guys, when I look at my drinking, I was a beer and wine type of guy. That's the way we were raised. Part of the culture of hockey is very much about drinking beer and going out with your teammates, being a good teammate, doing when someone says, hey, let's go out and have a drink together as a team, that's the stuff you're supposed to do, because there's a camaraderie to that, and there's there's a part of you that has to stick together as a group. And that stuff does linger in professional sports and athletics. Excuse me. And I think that I lived a lot by those standards. Where my story really gets interesting is through all of this, the biggest part of my life to this juncture when I played for the Flyers, is that I met someone here. I ended up getting married, and by 2000, in 1997, I was married. In 1998, we had our first daughter, Isabella. And that was when I realized, as I see all you kids now, and that being a dad was really the best part of my life. And things were really good. I was playing in the NHL. I was now an established veteran, playing a ton. We had a great team in Philadelphia. It was a great era of Flyers hockey. I was a new dad, and things were going really, really well in my life. And when I look back at my journey now, I was in my 20s, and I'm maybe just a little bit over 50 now. I think your teacher may know that, but I had, and again, I was kind of like, I came here at 22. I'll be 52, and that's 30 years, in one area. And so from a lot of ways, my life had been in the public in a lot of ways, both as a player and as a broadcaster, which I'll touch upon shortly. But I really feel like my journey into full alcohol use disorder probably started in 1998, 97, 98. So I started to drink a little bit more freely. My first year, as I said, in the league, I hardly drank at all. And then as I progressed in my career, every single year, I drank a little bit more. And I became a little bit of a caricature for my teammates. I was a fun-loving guy. I came to play every single night. I didn't take nights off. I was a well-liked guy in the locker room. I had, and as your teacher said, I played more games here on defense at the end of it than any other player still to this day. As a defenseman, and I think it's fifth or sixth most games in the history of the franchise. So I've been around this area, and I always say my greatest achievement was surviving Philadelphia for as long as I did. It can be a tough sports town. It can be a tough place to play. Passionate people. I love to see Philadelphia sports teams do well, but there's a lot of pressure on players as well. And that comes with it. That's not anybody's fault except my own dealing with it. But when my journey really turned was into the 2000s, about 20 years ago, and my alcohol started getting worse, and I started to become more dependent on it. By 2003, I had 3 daughters, Isabella, Ava, and Alexa, and they were really the best part, most important part of my life was always my kids, and I had loved being a dad. I wanted to give everything I could of being a dad, but I really couldn't because of the drinking that I did. And, I wasn't one of those violent people. I just was a person that had just taken my level of alcohol to a different level. And I partied a lot. My summers were spent drinking. We spent golfing in a lot of ways because we didn't have hockey in the summer. And, you play in the wintertime, and you get in a setting that I think sometimes when I look at pro sports, is not always conducive if you're not doing the right things. 3, 4, 5 months off in the summertime.
We stand for our morning prayer, our pledge of allegiance.
I'll hold off if you guys want to wait.
We cease a bit in our own rooms and Always.
Let's bring it back.
Our focus and attention on the prayer. Thank you much. Today we celebrate the beautiful feast day of our guardian angel. Feast of the guardian angels. We celebrated the archangels. Today's Friday, and today all of our guardian angels together. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Please join with me. O angel of God, my guardian dear, to whom God's love bids me near, never this day be at my side, to light, to guard, to rule, to guide. Amen. Now please join me in our morning Eucharistic prayer. O sacrament most holy, O sacrament divine, all praise and all thanksgiving be every moment thine. Immaculate Heart of Mary, pray for us. All of our guardian angels, pray for us. Saint Francis Xavier, pray for us. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Our pledge of allegiance, please join with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. May God bless America. Please be seated. Have a pleasant day.
Oh, we got lucky. No extra announcements. Okay. Thank you for that. Sorry for that interruption. I assume that brings you back a little bit.
No problem. Yes, and I'm a Catholic, born Catholic as well. I did go to Catholic high school for 2 years in Ottawa, and so I'm good with that. And thanks for the time out for a minute. I was backing up a little bit just to my kids, and I realized, as I was a dad, that was the most important thing. Part of my entire life was my kids, and unfortunately, my other kid was alcohol at the time, and that was tough. I look back at it now. There's an embarrassment to that, that I have to live with it. But when my career got really, really rough was 2004, and we had an NHL lockout. And you got to remember here too, it's kind of tough because yes, I'm drinking in the NHL, like not drinking in terms of it, but I have an issue, and I'm still playing a lot of hockey. I'm still playing a ton. I'm having a lot of success. So there's kind of like a mixed bag in a lot of ways in terms of the way people are, you're perceived. You're perceived as someone, maybe takes a little bit too far. And I think when I tell you I took it too far, I wasn't a bad guy. I just drank. I drank. I didn't cause problems for anybody. I didn't go get in bar fights. I wasn't, one of these guys that was causing problems on the streets or anything. I think a lot of my drinking was my own issue, dealing with what I was dealing with in life, whether it was playing the top level of hockey in the world, whether it was dealing with life issues, being a dad. Maybe I was too young at the time and ill-equipped to handle the things that came to me. And that's not anyone's fault but my own, and that's part of responsibility of life. But when 2004 came was when I realized that we had a lockout in the NHL. There's no hockey. There's a work stoppage from the league down to the players, and we didn't play hockey for a year. And that's really, for me, with that much time, having played probably 10, 11 years in the NHL already, that was a devil's playground for me. And that's really when my alcoholism spiraled out of control. I was having, it started dominating my life in every single way. I couldn't do anything on the day unless there was drinking involved. As I said, my one daughter, Isabella, was 6 years old. My other daughter, Ava, was 4. And Alexa, my youngest daughter, was, a year and a half, 2 years old. And I realized that that's not what I wanted to, not the way I wanted to live. I did not want to live, being an alcoholic parent, dealing with life like this. And as much as I was celebrated, hiding and dealing with having this disease was awful because, it felt like I had an ailment and I didn't know how to handle it. And I think the biggest thing is when people, and I'll get to the end part when I was talking about it, like the hardest thing to do is to ask for help when you're struggling with alcohol or drugs or anything, or a mental health crisis, is just asking people for that kind of support. And I realized after all these years that at the end of the day, that's all I needed to say. And especially in the world we live in today, I think there's a lot more acceptance for it in 2023 than there was maybe in 2003. You should have seen 1973. I can't imagine what that looked like in terms of acceptance from addiction and stuff, the way that people have been perceived over the years. But when I went through 2004, I ended up going to Dallas for about 9 games. I got traded, career was winding down, and I drank that whole 2004. I came back and played for the Flyers. again, I got re-signed by the Flyers, and this time I was really bad. Like I'd been drinking a lot. I felt like I probably could not go without the dependency of alcohol. And that was a tough thing to live with, to deal with. And I realized that, you know, I had to own that. My wife at Diana was pregnant also with what would be our fourth child. And I always say it was our accidental blessing. And he ended up being really one of the great things ever when I look back at history of where I'm at in my life right now. And I played for the Flyers that year, and this is to tell you guys, and I want you to understand it. You guys are younger. You're seniors in high school, but where things get really, really heavy for me, was a game in 2005, and here I was back with a lot of my teammates. I think people understood that I was older. Now I'm 34 years old, right? When I first got here, I was like 22, 23. So all that time in between, I've lived a whole life. You know, I've had kids. I've played great hockey. I've been to the Stanley Cup Finals. I've been in the Olympics. I was well liked. I was liked by the public. You know, one thing I can say is I think I was a pretty good person in public. You know, I love the fans here. I just couldn't give all of myself because of my drinking. And it was 2005 where I realized I was just so addicted to alcohol that I had to go in a game in December of 2005, and I actually had to drink in the middle of a game, about 8 ounces of vodka just to get myself through the third period. And the saddest part about that third period for me, when I went back out, was I felt like I totally crossed the line in terms of what was acceptable with this, you know, in terms of what the control that something like alcohol could have over me. Alcohol was my choice of drug. I don't have a story of cocaine, heroin. Drugs were never part of my story. I was raised with my mom and dad, you know, especially my dad saying, hey, you know what? Drugs will kill you. Don't do them. And I live by those standards, but drinking, you know, it's part of the culture of the game. If a teammate wants to go out and have a beer, you go out and have a beer with your teammate. And it's just funny. That's part of the culture of what I lived in. I know your teacher, Jeff, knows that, just being around the area. It's always been part of the culture, especially in Philadelphia. You know, people had there's millions of stories about old time hockey players and the public being able to have access to those guys, because we do take pride in being good guys. Hockey players are different than any other sport. We find time, like if there's someone wants to talk about something or ask questions, we will find time to answer those questions. I think it's a lot of the reason why our humble beginnings. You know, I always tell people I grew up in a home and in a life not unlike Northeast Philadelphia. You know, Delaware County, just that kind of atmosphere. A lot of probably where you're from. I went to Catholic high school, but I had good roots. I had good family roots built. And I had people that loved me, but I'd struggled, and again, I go back to my years. I think as my teenage years, the more I look back at my life of what I struggle with and what my journey as a young person, like your age, did to me later in life, and how that transcended to me. I drank that game December. It was a December 2004. And 2005. And I remember I drank about 8 ounces of vodka, and I went out and played the third period. I remember running out into the car with my shoes on. I took my skates off, and the two security guards like, where the hell is this guy going? And I was going out to my car to get alcohol because I knew that would calm my body. And I went out in the third period, and I ended up being the best player on the ice, which is just awful. That's what alcohol had done. It taken my level, calmed my nerves, allowed me to go back out and play. And I knew that when that happened, that would be a real problem, that resolved my issue. It was like my life now, except now I brought it into my business world. And still to this day, of all the great accomplishments I've had, doing that and having to resort to that. I didn't do it because I wanted to do it. I did it because I had to do it, because the withdrawal, the addiction was so prevalent in my body that I just could not go without having that medication, that vodka medication in me to right my own ship, to allow my bodily functions to go out and perform. That's how sick I had gotten. And it was less than a year later that my career was over. And I went through at this point. I'm going to talk for about another 5 minutes, guys. Try to close it and leave some questions open. When you find out in life that and I promise you, this is one thing in life that you'll deal with is the unknown and things sometimes that you're not prepared for. And in 2006, still a full bore alcoholic. The best friend I had in my life was my younger sister, Sarah. And she was the one that understood my pain. She was the one I was able to share my story with the most. And she had a sudden cardiac event in June of 2006, and she passed away. And I was at the highest level of my alcoholism. I didn't have a whole lot of people that wanted to be around me. My career was over. You know, I just had I was just gotten older. I drank too much. I was tired. I had 3 kids, and I had a pregnant wife with a baby on the way. And I needed to go to rehab. I'd never been. I was scared to ask for help. And my sister, who I just adored to pieces, had passed away, and I had to go home to her funeral in front of 1,000 people and give her a eulogy. And I still never got over that to this day. My sister, I miss her so much. I still do every day. And I know anyone that has siblings, and I know a lot of you do, how important those siblings are in life. And you know, when I lost Sarah, that was something I had to deal with in terms of it. And 2 weeks after her funeral, on July 8th of 2006, I went to Therien Treatment Center in Pennsylvania. The NHL league had helped me get in. And when I went in there, my blood alcohol level was the highest blood alcohol level they'd ever heard of. It was a 0.63. Now, a 0.08 is when you're legally drunk. I was 8 times the legal level. And I was walking and talking, and I probably sounded like I do right now. That's how sick I was and how far my tolerance to alcohol had come. I was drinking vodka every day, all day. And when I went into to Therien, that's still a record to this day. Of the thousands and thousands and thousands of people whose lives they've saved, I went in there with the highest single blood alcohol level that I've ever had, that they've ever seen. And I should be dead. I'm here. I'm alive. And the reason I'm told I was alive is because I was one of the, trained as high a level as I did as a hockey player. We were kept in shape, was ultimately what saved my life. I just was so well conditioned physically on top of that drinking. And that was my motto my whole life. You know, if I drank till 3 a.m, well, you better be at the track at 6 o'clock with me, because if I'm there and I went out all night, then you better be there too if you didn't. I went through a lot of pain, you guys, and at that time in my life. And I got 2 years sober when I came out of Therien. I had another hiccup. At this time, I was rewarded by the Flyers for, I think, a lot of the good I did over the years, trying to give me a break and opportunity. I was doing radio for the team. And then just to give you guys a semblance of where I'm at, up until 2020, I was doing radio. I also did TV for 6 years. I did the main broadcast for 4, and I did pre and post game for, I think, another 3 or 4. So on top of my 12 or 13 year career, 12 years with the Flyers, my time here, I also did another 15 as a broadcaster, both as a frontman, the lead guy in radio and TV. And through that, my early days of radio, I had another hiccup. I eventually realized when my son was born, Chris Jr. was born in November 11, 2006. He's unbelievable. Like, when I look at him now, and I'm just so proud of him. He's a high school kid, 16 years old. He's 6'6", 270. He's bigger than I am now, and he's still just 16, but he's a football player. And really, when I look and thank God for the great things I've had, my kids have been part of the most important part of my journey. And when I see all your faces there, I know how proud your mom and dads are, and your brothers and sisters as well, because I know what that's like. And the best part about me, and why I always say, well, man, I lasted a long time here drinking, I was a good teammate. And one of the things I always encourage my kids to be are great teammates. And they've been that. I had a hiccup again after I got out of Therien. I'm going to wrap this up here for you guys for questions. And the best part of what happened is that I never got back to those drinking days before. I ended up trying to hide it more because people kind of knew. And I was still obviously struggling with whatever was going on in my world, in my head. I still had not rectified it yet. And it was February 7th of 2011. I felt like I had this tickle on the end of my toe where someone said, you know what, it's over. It's okay, but it's over. You can stop now. And I went to Alcoholics Anonymous. That I always tell people, I don't know if anyone ever has a parent, an aunt, an uncle, grandparent, brother, sister. Alcoholics Anonymous is the most important part of recovery for any person struggling with addiction, especially alcohol. We do get people that have drug addiction that do come in. It's a good means to go. But that's been a savior for me. And I always tell people to never discourage the meaning of what Alcoholics Anonymous it means. It saves so many people in those rooms. And that was February 7th, 2011 was a day after a couple more hiccups where I said, enough's enough. My oldest daughter, Isabella, was understood that I'd struggle with alcohol. My younger daughters did too. My wife, Diane, at the time, again, she'd been through a lot. She'd been through an awful lot as a person, having to raise kids and not always have a present husband. But I was afforded the opportunity to have my road to redemption. And as I said, that's the name of my book. It came out last year, October 25th. It'll be a year coming up, which seems amazing. And when I look at a road to redemption doesn't necessarily mean stop drinking from alcohol. It means being able to do the things in life that you're supposed to do. My daughters, all three of them, I had before it's Isabella went on a Friday night. She was I think a 7th grader, maybe 6th grader. I brought her out to a basketball court in South Jersey, and she hadn't played. She was a good athlete, good soccer player, really good athlete, lacrosse as a kid. And we put her on the basketball court. And she was a natural. Like, I'd never seen anything like that kid just picking up a basketball, being that athletic and that good with it. And she ended up from that point on being the pioneer of our family. They all three of my daughters went on to play Division I basketball, full scholarships, all three of them. Isabella ended up going to Loyola University, Maryland. Her two sisters followed her there. My youngest daughter, Alexa, was actually committed to Boston University, and then they changed coaches and she flipped over to Loyola. But the reason I'm telling you this is to show you guys the pride in me and the win in life that I've had from the decisions I've made stopping. I had the opportunity to change the fortunes of just not myself, but my kids. And that to me has been the proudest moment of my life. I still have two daughters that are playing Division I basketball at Loyola. Alexa is one of, I think, 18 players in the entire country that average a double-double in Division I basketball. Ava, my second daughter, is a 5th-year senior. And Isabella lives in Indianapolis. Her boyfriend is a starting lineman for the Indianapolis Colts. His name's Will Fries. And Christopher is here in Marlton. He lives here. He goes to Cherokee. He's a junior and a football player. And I'm truly gleeful when I look at the opportunity that I was able to have to give my kids the life they had, but to also recover in front of them and to let them see that it's okay to have faults. It's okay to have shortcomings in life. It's okay to fall down and get back up again, because that is really what life is all about. It's not about the things that we've gone through that are difficult and hard. It's how we adjust to those things and how we deal with them. And that for me ended up, in many, many ways, I get up in the morning with a sense of pride. Yes, I've had some struggles in life. I've had moments that I'm not proud of, but I am proud of the fact that I was able to get through this and I resolved it. What am I doing now? Well, you know what? Ultimately, as I found out, road to redemption means many things. In 2020, I was let go by the Flyers after 27 years of full service. They had a new regime of people in that didn't necessarily understand the past of the franchise, and I ended up. Sorry, guys. I ended up when I left. Someone came up to me and said, "Hey, Chris, if you're still doing something, you should maybe join a podcast and talk about hockey still." I'm like, well, I don't know, but I love the fans so much, and people did enjoy listening to me on Post Game Live on NBC Sports Philadelphia, that I said, you know what, let me do that. I'm going to do that. So I took a year off and I came back and I joined a podcast called Snow the Goalie. And I went on with a very, very unfiltered version of where the Flyers were at, a very honest interpretation. I do it with two guys from Anthony Sanfilippo, who's a writer, and Russ Joy, who's a podcast host. And I think we've turned it into the biggest hockey podcast in the city of Philadelphia. And it wasn't always pleasant, I don't think, for maybe the Flyers to hear it some weeks, but it was honest. And that's one thing I've been in my life, is honest. When I look at my road to redemption now, I'd gotten a call back in 2 months ago from the Flyers, and my old buddy Keith Jones, who's now the president of the team. And I'll be back doing radio, pregame radio, 97.5 next week. Season starts next Thursday. And Snow the Goalie podcast, which hasn't been announced yet. It's supposed to be this week, so don't tell anybody. We're going to be probably the in-house podcast for the Flyers, just because I didn't give up on things. And I think it's a good lesson in life to learn. Be diligent in what you do. Never, ever, ever give up, ever. And that's when I look at my story now. What did I do the best in life? Not a whole lot. I look back, I had a lot of achievements, but what I did well was figure out my path that was the least constructive and make it the best I could moving forward. I've been blessed with a lot of great things, and one of the great parts of my journey in recovery has been that it's been here in Philadelphia. People in this town have been like my family as much as my own family, and I can't, as I tell people when I speak, I can't thank them enough for that, because the love and the care that I've had from people out there, the understanding where people come and say, hey, Chris, I know what's gone on, or I'm dealing with this myself. It's meaningful and impactful to me, and I'm grateful for it. You'll understand when you get older, little things that mean things in life and what really is important. Family, friends, giving of yourself to others. These are all little things that you'll find your footing on it in life. But as I tell people, if you're struggling, all you need to do is ask for help. That was a part for me that kind of kept me down, was the fear of getting well, even when I wasn't. And sometimes that's the misleading part of addiction, is it puts false pretenses in your head and makes you someone you're not. The real person is the one that's you. That's who you are sitting in that class this morning. It does not include a person that has an addiction. But I didn't just sit around in the 3 years from the Flyers, and I'll end it right now. I opened up 4, now 5 centers, addiction centers in the area. Also mental health. The mental health crisis that will come from the pandemic 3 years ago will last decades, and that will also increase addiction. I'm a proud partner and founder of Pennsylvania Recovery Center. We have spots in Fishtown, Phoenixville, and Cherry Hill, New Jersey. We're also opening another one in Marlton, New Jersey, if we can get some stuff going on and the licensing goes through. But we have sober living houses. We do a lot with the Veterans Affairs, so I have something very special to me. And my attitude in life is to give back. I've been in that pain before, and if someone is struggling, I want them to understand that they're not alone. They'll never be alone. And that if you are, I tell people all the time, there's parents, anybody, siblings struggling, you can get a hold of us and get them the help that they need. That's my give back to the city. That's what I work at now. I'll be doing some flyer stuff as I move forward, but the most important stuff I do right now is the recovery work I do in the city, because ultimately it gives people an opportunity to hear my story, and I try to change their fortunes by having an understanding of what I went through, and hopefully that they can relate to that. And get a better foot forward. No one has to live in the state of addiction. That's only a choice, like getting sober is. So I hope you guys had an understanding of this. I'm going to open up the questions for a few minutes here, and we'll go from there. Thanks for being a great listening audience.
Thank you. All right, so now we'll see which one of you guys all did what you were supposed to do and come prepared with some questions for Chris. So all right, we got a bunch. All right, so Avery, we got Maya, Becca's got some, Charlie. All right, so Avery, why don't you could start, and I'll try to speak loud, and I'll mention it if we can't hear it.
If you could change anything from your past, do differently, if there was anything, what would you do differently?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think a lot of people that get stuck in the throes of addiction would tell you that they'd go back and speak to their younger self. That would be something I definitely do. But I can't speak to my younger self, so I can talk to other younger selves and have them understand. I think the biggest part when I look at my story was people say, well, how does that happen? And I look at the room, I was no different than the kids in that room, very, very normal upbringing. And I want people to understand that addiction can happen. It's a slow, gradual process, especially with drinking. It is a progressive disease. It does not get better. It's not going to just go away. It doesn't pick or choose who it goes after. It does not care if you're a professional athlete, if you're a doctor, or if you're someone driving an Uber. It doesn't matter. It's not going to differentiate. So for me, I would go back and talk to the 14-year-old version of myself and let them know that, everything in moderation, because anything in excess is just not good.
Fair. Maya?
Affecting your performance games.
I don't know if the question was, did you feel that alcohol was affecting your performance in games?
Well, no doubt, and like I said, when I had to drink in that one game, like when I did that was to try to help me, get through what I was going through. I mean, I wasn't drinking to be like, oh, I want to drink. I was drinking because I was trying to survive. And that's what I got to. And if I didn't drink, I could have died. That's really what happened. And that's what happens with people that struggle with alcohol. There's an old adage when they talk about people is struggling with addiction. They said if you took 5 heroin addicts and you put them in a room for 5 days and you locked the key and came back, you would have 5 pissed off drug addicts in that room. If you put 5 alcoholics in a room and you locked the door and you came back in 5 days, you probably would have 3 dead alcoholics, because the addiction, the physical withdrawal, can do that much damage to somebody with an alcohol addiction, to a drug addiction. So I would talk to myself and it's going back to it and tell myself it's just not good. But drinking, did it help or hurt my performance? It did both. It just depended. Over the long term, drinking was awful. In the short term, it probably worked. Neither is a good answer.
Ms. Becca?
Is there anything that your loved ones could have done to support you, or is there anything you would tell someone that has someone that's struggling with alcoholism that they can do to support?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough, because what happens is with addiction, I think, is I always tell people, it's not 100% with a loved one, and you do damage, I think, and people deal with that. So there's a fine line between wanting to help somebody, but also, getting ticked off at them. There's comes a line where you push so far that it becomes hard for the people that are supposed to love you and care for you to really put forth that foot, because how can you talk to someone that's in addiction, that's drinking, that you can't even rationalize with? So until you get out of it, and unfortunately with people that drink, there's not a whole lot of discussion you can have that's going to be meaningful. When people are drinking, they're just not rational. And when they overdrink, they're completely not rational. So yeah, I'd love to say that that's the case. And the way I handle people now that's struggling with addiction, I give them a hug first. I gotta let them know, like, it's okay. But you have the choice to, it's your choice to decide what you want to do with it. Do you want to stay sober and happy? Or you want to continue down the path you've been on? And those are the decisions that you have to face, and those are the ones that you have to own. Good question.
Charlotte?
That's similar. Did you feel like there was any in the very beginning that you were struggling?
That's a good question. Did you hear that, Chris?
I did not.
Yeah, the question was there anybody who noticed early in the beginning that you were struggling, maybe before other people did?
Yeah, probably my wife and my mother. As they talk to it, because my wife would talk to my mother and say, I think something's a little off with them and stuff. But it's hard when you're young, to convey that message accordingly. And doesn't mean it's right or wrong. It just means that it's just hard. It is. Yeah, I think so. And was there anything anybody could do? Probably. I mean, except talk. No, I mean, because if you, I really do believe the one thing at the end of the day is it does take the person struggling with addiction to be the one that has to make that call. You can be led to water by somebody else, but it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to drink. That has to be on you. And I look back at my journey of sobriety and recovery, and every decision that was made that was a good one was made by me. I could have suggestions made, but ultimately it's the most important thing is the suggestions I make to myself and taking the right steps to make sure that I make those right decisions.
I know, Coriana, you had something. Kate, you had go.
Do you like today still have the urge to drink?
It's always a good question. The question was, do you still ever have the urge to drink today?
It's a great question. So February 7th, 2011, I'm coming up on 13 years. My greatest, I look at my accomplishments of hockey. There's some great accomplishments, no doubt, but my greatest accomplishment personally is my sobriety. Do I have the urge to drink? I have like a glimpse sometimes of what that would look like again. And the part that for me that I understand the most is that if I drink again, I will go right back to where I was. There's no so I think we're all born cucumbers. Everybody in that room right there is a cucumber right now. And I became a pickle. And I can't go back to being that cucumber again. I'm pickled. So what happens is with alcohol or addiction, especially with alcohol, it's not like you could go drink, become a full bore alcoholic, and then quit for 2 years and start over at zero again. Like, oh, I'm brand new again. No, exactly where I drank and where I stopped is exactly where I would get right back on that train again. So I choose no to that because I've seen the good of what sobriety looks like. It's not perfect, but it's far, far better than living in addiction. So do I have an urge? I don't want to say an urge, maybe a little, a glimpse sometimes, but I'm able to take that glimpse now and realize that it's going to do me no good at all. And that's built into my head.
You have time for one more cucumber question? Or are you good? Kate?
Like you said that started early in like life, like in your teenagers and whatnot. There like be any signs that you say to like someone young and their struggles later in their life?
Could you repeat that, Jeff, please?
Yeah, sure. It was as you were coming up, are there any signs that you can kind of see that there is potentially a problem? That's kind of where you were saying it. Yeah. So yeah, just kind of warning signs.
I think drinking's weird. The more we normalize it, the more prevalent it becomes and the simpler it is. So, again, there's the stories, we always tell people, there's stories of kids having those drinks at 11 and 12 years old, sipping something that they bring to their parents. I always just tell people to be aware of what's going on in their life, to be honest with themselves, and also if they're dealing, I always tell people, young people, it's different. There's a lot of young kids, like my kids went through, dealing with me. There may be kids in a lot of classrooms, and there are across America, where they have a parent that's dealing with addiction. And I always tell people, if you're in that spot, or you're looking for something, or you're monitoring what someone's behavior is, just let them know that, there's a better way. You're never really able to out-talk someone in their addiction, but there is a far, far better way. And from someone that loved to drink, I have to look back at it. I was addicted to alcohol. I love to drink. I wouldn't trade that back in for anything in the world right now. So I always tell people, just especially young people, they make drinks now like they didn't before. And I'm going to tell you, you all listen, you know it. Don't ever try anything that comes off the street, whether it's in a form of a drug. Young people do try stuff. People smoke marijuana. They do different things. And I always advise them, please be careful. But I also understand that there are young people out there, kids try things, kids do things, and you don't mean to do it. But please, you guys, tell your friends, do not do anything off the street. It could literally kill you with the fentanyl that's out there now in the industry I'm in. I see it. It's heartbreaking. I deal with parents all the time. And yeah, I have to scare you because I have to have people understand just how detrimental it is. I've seen kids that have gone out, taken a painkiller, and they were dead because it was laced with the wrong stuff. Have eyes open, people acting irrationally, be a good friend, be a good teammate, be a good sibling, whatever that might be, and try to help that person. At least bring it to their attention, and you might just save a life at the end of the day.
I mean, that's the perfect way to wrap up. So I just want to say, Chris, we really, really appreciate you taking the time. I know it's early in the morning. Sounds like you're a little under the weather. And I'm really, really thankful for you to come in and spend your time with us. So
it's my pleasure. And I will say at the back end of this, the Flyers are going to be back. They're taking their so you're going to take a little bit, a year or so to start becoming prevalent again. But I will tell everybody, and Jeff, you know this, nothing better than when Flyers hockey is great. And it looks like you got a whole room full of future generation of fans right there.
oh, absolutely. I think I want to say 80% or more are athletes themselves. So yeah, we're all behind it now that things have changed. You're back, Jonesy's back. This is great. This is terrific.
Good stuff. Really good stuff. Guys, thanks for being such a great audience. I wish you nothing but success this school year. Listen to your teacher and don't be too tough on Mr. Dunn.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.